Every single day, millions of people open their refrigerator, pull out leftovers, and put them straight into the microwave without thinking twice. They assume something very simple. If food was safe the first time it was cooked, then heating it again must also be safe. But that assumption is not always true. Because when certain foods are stored, cooled, and then reheated the wrong way, the danger is not always obvious. Sometimes it is bacterial, sometimes it is chemical, and sometimes it is a combination of both. You cannot see these changes happening. You usually cannot smell them. And in many cases, you will not taste anything unusual either. But that does not mean nothing has changed. My name is Dr. Elena. I work in preventive health, and one of the things I care deeply about is helping people reduce avoidable exposures that place stress on the body over time. Whether that stress comes from poor food safety habits, chronic inflammation, or repeated exposure to compounds we should be minimizing whenever possible. And today, I want to show you 4 foods that people reheat all the time. Foods that may be in your kitchen right now, but which can become far less safe, and in some cases, far less healthy, when they are reheated carelessly. Stay with me until the end, because the 4th food on this list is the one most people feel completely relaxed about reheating. In fact, many people think it is one of the safest leftovers in the refrigerator. It is not. Now, before we go any further, I need to be very clear about something. This video is not about paranoia. It is not about pretending that one bite of reheated food causes cancer, and it is not about fear-mongering. This is about understanding where avoidable risk comes from. In medicine, especially in cancer prevention, that matters. Because cancer risk is often not about one dramatic exposure. It is about patterns, habits, repeated decisions, tiny things people do over and over for years because nobody ever told them to look more closely. And food is one of those areas where simple daily habits matter more than most people realize. So before we talk about the 4 foods, let me give you a quick foundation. When food is cooked for the first time, heat changes it in predictable ways. Proteins unfold, starches soften, fats melt and oxidize to some degree. That is normal. But when food is then stored, exposed to air, moisture, time, and temperature fluctuation, and then heated again, you are no longer dealing with a freshly cooked food. You are dealing with a food that has already been chemically and biologically altered once. That is where problems begin. There are 3 broad mechanisms I want you to keep in mind as we go through this list. The first is bacterial growth and toxin formation. Some foods can become contaminated or allow bacteria to multiply if they are cooled too slowly or left out too long. In some cases, reheating kills the bacteria, but does not destroy the toxin they already produced. The second is oxidation. Fats and proteins can degrade over time, especially when they are heated repeatedly. That breakdown can produce unwanted compounds that increase oxidative stress and inflammatory burden in the body. The third is high heat compound formation. Certain foods, especially meats and fried foods, can form compounds during aggressive reheating, particularly if you use very high heat, pan-fry leftovers, or keep reheating until the edges char, brown, or crisp. 3 ideas: bacterial toxins, oxidation, and high heat byproducts. Keep those in mind, because one or more of them show up in every food we are about to discuss. Food number 1, rice. Rice is one of the most reheated foods in the world. People meal prep it, pack it for lunch, leave it on the counter, put it in the fridge, reheat it the next day, sometimes the day after that. And most people think the only question is whether it feels hot enough when it comes out of the microwave. But rice has a very specific food safety problem. Raw rice can contain spores from a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. Those spores can survive the initial cooking process. If cooked rice is then left at room temperature too long, or cooled too slowly, those spores can become active. The bacteria can grow, and under the wrong conditions, they can produce toxins. Here is the critical part. Reheating the rice may kill bacteria, but if toxin has already formed, the heat may not make that rice safe again. That is why rice is so deceptive. It looks harmless, it smells harmless, and yet it can become risky because of what happened between the first cooking and the second heating. Now, is this mainly a food poisoning issue rather than a direct cancer issue? Yes, and that distinction matters. But in prevention medicine, we care deeply about reducing unnecessary toxic exposures, reducing inflammatory insults to the body, and avoiding habits that people repeat casually because they think reheating erases every mistake. It does not. So what should you do? If you cook rice, cool it quickly. Do not leave it sitting out for hours. Get it into the refrigerator promptly. Store it well, and if you reheat it, reheat only the amount you will actually eat. One cooking, one careful reheat, not repeated cycles. Because with rice, the danger is not microwave radiation. The danger is bad storage followed by false confidence. Food number 2, processed meats. This is where many people start to get uncomfortable. Because when I say processed meats, I mean foods like bacon, sausages, hot dogs, deli meats, salami, and similar products people routinely warm up again the next day. These foods already come with concerns of their own. They often contain preservatives such as nitrites, along with salt, fats, and compounds created during curing or smoking. And when you reheat them aggressively, especially in a frying pan, on high heat, until the edges darken, crisp, or char, you can drive the formation of additional undesirable compounds, including nitrosamine-related concerns and other high-heat reaction products. This is one of the reasons processed meats are so different from simply reheating plain steamed vegetables or a basic soup. You are not reheating a neutral food. You are reheating a food that may already be chemically more complex, more processed, and more vulnerable to harmful changes under heat. As a doctor, I want to be precise here. I am not saying that reheating one slice of deli meat means disaster. I am saying that if a person regularly eats processed meat and then repeatedly reheats it at high temperatures, that person is stacking multiple risk factors on top of each other. Processing, preservatives, high heat, repeated exposure. That pattern is exactly the kind of thing we try to reduce in preventive medicine. And the tragedy is that people often do it in the name of convenience. Leftover breakfast sausage, a reheated bacon sandwich, microwave deli meat on repeat, a pan-fried hot dog from the day before. It feels normal because it is common. But common does not always mean low risk. If you eat processed meats at all, minimize how often you reheat them, avoid scorching them, and do not keep bringing them back to high temperatures over and over again. Food number 3, chicken and other cooked meats reheated until they brown again. This one matters because it catches a different kind of person. It catches the person who is trying to eat clean, the meal prep person, the gym person, the high-protein person, the person with containers of chicken in the refrigerator thinking, I'm being disciplined, so I must be doing something healthy. And, to be fair, choosing lean protein can absolutely be part of a healthy diet. But the problem begins when cooked meat is reheated too hard. If yesterday's chicken goes back into a hot pan, air fryer, or oven until it browns again, crisps again, or starts to darken at the edges, you are recreating the same high-heat environment that can increase the formation of compounds such as heterocyclic amines, especially in muscle meats. These are the compounds researchers talk about when discussing heavily browned or charred meats. Now, the evidence in humans is not perfectly simple. It is not honest to say every reheated chicken dish directly causes cancer. That is stronger than the evidence supports. But it is fair and responsible to say this. The harder and hotter you cook meat, the more unwanted compounds you may create. And if your habit is to repeatedly take already cooked meat and aggressively heat it until it tastes freshly grilled, you may be increasing exposure you simply do not need. That is the key idea. Not fear, not perfection, just unnecessary exposure. And this is exactly why people get confused. They think the danger comes only from undercooked chicken. No, sometimes the problem is the opposite. Overheating leftovers, drying them out, browning them again, turning a safe leftover into a repeatedly stressed food. If you are reheating cooked chicken, do it gently. Use enough moisture. Avoid charring. Do not keep reheating the same batch day after day. And if the only way you find it enjoyable is to make it crispy again, that is a sign you may want to cook less at a time and eat it fresher. If you are finding this valuable, subscribe to the channel, because this is exactly what I do here. Take confusing health topics, remove the hype, and give you practical guidance you can actually use. Now let's go to the fourth food. And this is the one that surprises almost everyone. Food number 4. Fried foods and food sitting in old cooking oil. French fries, fried chicken, breaded cutlets, takeout fried snacks. Anything that was deep fried once, then refrigerated, then heated again, especially if you are trying to bring back the crunch. This is one of the most overlooked reheating problems in modern diets. Why? Because when foods are fried, the oil itself undergoes stress. Heat, oxygen, and time begin to degrade the fat. Then the fried food sits. The oil on and inside that food continues to change. And when you reheat it again, especially in an oven, pan, or air fryer at high temperatures, you are stressing those fats for a second time. That matters, because degraded oils can generate oxidation products and aldehyde-type compounds that are not something you want to be consuming regularly. And this is where people fool themselves. They say, I'm not frying it again, I'm just reheating it. But if the food is already saturated with previously heated oil, and now you are blasting it with heat again to make it crisp, functionally, you are still pushing that oxidized fat environment further. This is especially concerning with takeaway foods, fast foods, or foods that were already cooked in commercial frying conditions that may have used oil for extended periods. And no, I am not saying one leftover fry is a medical emergency. But once again, we are talking about patterns. If somebody's routine is leftover fried chicken, leftover fries, leftover breaded food, reheated again and again because it is easy and cheap, that person is repeatedly exposing themselves to food that has become chemically less stable and less favorable from a health perspective. This is the food on the list that people rarely suspect, because everyone talks about sugar, everyone talks about calories, everyone talks about carbs. Very few people talk about what happens to oil-rich fried food when it sits, oxidizes, and then gets hit with heat again. And that silence is exactly why it deserves your attention. So let's bring all 4 foods together. Food number 1, rice. The issue is improper cooling and storage, with bacterial toxin risk that reheating may not fully solve. Food number 2, processed meats. The issue is combining an already processed food with repeated high-temperature reheating. Food number 3, chicken and other cooked meats reheated until they brown again. The issue is excessive high heat and the formation of unwanted compounds in meat. Food number 4, fried foods and oil-heavy leftovers. The issue is repeated heat stress on already degraded fats. 4 foods, different mechanisms, one pattern. The more heavily processed, poorly stored, repeatedly heated, or aggressively browned a leftover becomes, the less confident you should feel about it. So what should you do instead? Very simple. Cook smaller portions when possible. Cool leftovers quickly. Refrigerate them promptly. Reheat only what you are going to eat. Avoid reheating the same food multiple times. Use gentler reheating methods when you can. And do not turn yesterday's food into today's overcooked version of itself. A food thermometer is helpful. Moist heat is often better than scorching dry heat. And if something has already been reheated once, think very carefully before doing it again, because the healthiest habit is not becoming expert at reviving leftovers. the healthiest habit is reducing the need to rescue them in the first place. Now I want to ask you something. Which of these 4 foods surprised you the most? Was it rice? Because almost everybody assumes rice is harmless once it is hot again. Was it processed meat? Because people forget that reheating compounds the problems of an already processed food. Was it chicken? Because healthy meal prep can still go wrong when leftovers are overheated. Or was it fried food? Because almost nobody thinks about what repeated heat does to old oil. Tell me in the comments. And if there is another food you want me to break down in a future video, leave that there too. I read the comments, and they often shape what I research next. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one final thought. Most people do not make these mistakes because they are careless. They make them because nobody ever explained the difference between hot food and safe food, between convenient food and low-risk food, between "I've always done it this way" and "this is actually a good idea." That gap matters, because health is not only about what you eat, it is also about how you store it, how you handle it, and how often you expose it to heat after it was meant to be finished. And once you understand that, you start looking at leftovers very differently. Not with fear, with awareness. If this video helped you, share it with someone who reheats food without thinking twice. A student, a parent, a spouse, a friend doing weekly meal prep, or someone who lives on takeout leftovers. Not to scare them, just to help them make more informed decisions. Because prevention does not always begin in a hospital. Sometimes it begins in a kitchen. I'm Dr. Elena, and if you want more clear, evidence-informed health videos like this, make sure you subscribe. And as always, this video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not personal medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have a medical condition, special dietary needs, or questions about food safety related to pregnancy, chemotherapy, immune suppression, or chronic illness, speak with your physician or a qualified healthcare professional.